Today's conversation here on the Tenpenny Files is a little bit different. Our conversation is with Darek Isaacs about his novel, The Legendary Adventures of Doc Copper and the Mad Dash of Fireface. It is a great read. It's intended for boys ages 11 to 15, but anyone that likes to read adventure stories, whether they're a boy, a girl, or an adult, will really enjoy this book. It is an absolute page turner, and it's about perseverance, friendships, and will. And so it really is inspirational. I turned every page as fast as I could because it's written so well, and I know you will too. So, welcome to the Tenpenny Files. I'm your host, Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. If it matters to your body, your freedom, or your future, we talk about it here. There's a new topic here every day. So, you can join us daily and learn something different. And I want to bring topics to you that you've never heard of before or that you've always wanted to explore but never had time. And I want you to think and stretch your boundaries. We talk about politics, history, astronomy, astrology, food, fitness, farming, and of course, vaccines and vaccine policy. And at least once a week, I have a conversation with a pastor or an author who writes about faith and biblical principles. So join me here every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern on AmericaOutloud.news or on iHeartRadio for the Tenpenny Files, as we hear from voices that have often been ignored, censored, or silenced. Before we begin today's episode, I want to invite everyone to become a Tenpenny Prime member. If you're not a Prime member, you've missed out on some great content. To learn more, go to primemembership.drtenpenny.com, primemembership.drtenpenny.com, and hopefully you'll become a Prime member and support the work we do. And one last thing, welcome to all of our regulars. We are so glad you're here. And for all the first-time listeners who just stumbled on our show, we hope you'll make it a regular part of your listening experience or your podcast watching. We're grateful that you're here. Now let's get started. Today's conversation is with author, film producer, and entrepreneur Darek Isaacs about his debut novel, The Legendary Adventures of Doc Copper and the Mad Dash of Fireface, a story that combines action, humor, friendship, and perseverance into an unforgettable adventure read. Darek, welcome so much to the Tenpenny Files. I'm so glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invite. Thank you.
What inspired you to write this legendary adventure about Doc Copper, and why did you feel it was the right story for today?
Well, I grew up on a farm, and I grew up riding four-wheelers and motorcycles and horses, and it was a cattle farm. And then, in my teenage years, actually, we had a barn, and I lived during the summertime in the barn. We had like this little makeshift apartment, and a buddy of mine would come over, and we would just kind of in the summer hang out in this barn, and we would just get into stuff. We would ride horses, we would ride these four wheelers, we would all over the farm, and we would just kind of explore everything and have a lot of fun. And those kind of real life adventures grew into the idea for Legendary Adventures of Doc Copper. And as I grew up in life, and I went, finished school, went off to college, my buddies, my great friends that I ran into, I decided to just kind of use their personas and create kind of fictionalized characters from them and put them all into like 13 and 14-year-old bodies, boil them down to that, stick them in a barrel, spin them up, and then just see what kind of adventures we could get into if they were all together. And so that's kind of, that's where it came from. I also, we had a cattle farm. And so I showed cattle. I traveled the country from the time I was like 8, 9 years old in a truck and a trailer. And I would go all over the United States showing cattle and competitions. And so that's where my love of road trips came in. That's where my love of trucks and trailers came in. And so that shows up, in the book of road trips. They're going somewhere and they're packing down, a trailer and stuff like that. And so that's where all the inspiration came from.
Did Doc Copper represent you in this story?
No, no,
No?
no. I tell you what, Doc Copper, just real. transparent here. Um, he's really everything I wish I could be. You know,
Hmm.
if I looked at a character like that, and it's just like, man, he every obstacle that he comes against, he finds a way to push through. You know, it doesn't matter how much he gets beaten down, doesn't matter how much is in front of him, it doesn't matter how big that mountain is. If he can't get over that mountain, he's going to try to go through that mountain. You know, and it's just, you know, he's so talented and he's so gifted. But you know, people that are talented and gifted come they come around a lot, but very few people are talented and gifted, but then they have this internal drive, this perseverance to go as hard as they can. You know, and so I look at Doc Copper, and I love his character. I'm just like, wow, wouldn't it be awesome to aspire to this kind of person? You know, sure, he's gifted, he's talented, but it for so many people it stops there. So many people have gifts. I think everybody has a special gift, but they stop when things get too hard. They stop and they kind of fall back. And so for Doc, it's just this figure of saying, you know, no matter what happens, I'm going to keep going. And then he finds, you know, in the story, you know, he finds that sometimes life is too hard to keep going if you're only going for yourself, if you're only going for your own glorification, if you're only going for self gratification, you're eventually going to burn out because those aren't strong enough drives. They're just not strong enough drives. You know, we've all lived a life and we all hit hard times. And what is it that keeps us going? And it's not for self glory and self gratification. That's not what it is. And usually, the people that are successful because they find another reason to live. They're living for something greater than themselves, and they're finding a love that is for somebody else, for God, their faith, their family, their friends, and they figure out the to get the best out of yourself, you have to live for something greater than yourself. And so that's that journey that Doc is on. You know, at the beginning, there is a little arrogance in him. There is arrogance in him. And he's really kind of he's gifted, but you know, he's about himself and he wants that glory. He wants to win at all costs. And but you see this growth in him where to really accomplish everything he wants to accomplish, he's got to have a deeper love. And so I look at that and I admire that. I, you know, kind of wish I could be more like that and write a story to where I can aspire to it. And then hopefully others can too. You know, they see that and they get inspired by Doc as well.
Well, the characters that you wrote about in the story, you so developed their character personalities that as you're reading this story, as you're going through the book, you have a magnificent way with dialogue. You know, in the book, it's just written the dialogue. You could just hear these kids talking to each other, and you could almost give them their own tone of voice. You know, of what based on their character. It's just really marvelous that you developed those whole character lines. And I literally found myself, you know, several different times with J Dog in particular, just laughing, literally laughing out loud at some of the things he did and the way he was acting and, you know, what he did to Alfie and how those kids
Yeah.
interacted. It's like, oh my goodness. And it was just a delightful read. You know, so many parents these days are frustrated with the entertainment choices available to their kids.
Yeah.
I had a gentleman by the name of Brent Dusing on my show a few months ago, and he's a software developer. He developed a software called True Play, which is a Christian video game company, because he said video games are not
Okay.
go away, and their choices are pornography and bad language and violence
Right.
and all this
Right.
stuff on Google. So he developed this whole Christian video company. But getting kids to read again is so important. So, why do you think that families are searching for different kinds of books for their kids today that led you to read such an incredible, or led you to write such an incredible adventure novel as this?
Well, you're you're absolutely right. If you look at the entertainment industry, from movies to TVs to books, there is such a small sliver that people of faith, people that we can actually trust to let our kids watch. You know, I have a daughter, and I always have to apologize to her, explain to her, okay, this is not what we believe. This is not the language we want to use. This is not. It's everywhere. And so I wanted to write something that that she could read. I mean, so and I figured if this is how I felt, if I felt that there was a lack of good entertainment for my own child, wouldn't others feel the same way? And so that was just as simple as that. It's not any more profound than that. I don't think I'm an anomaly. I don't think I'm the only one out there that believes what I believe and has the faith that I have. And so it's just kind of like, if I want it, I'm guessing other people want it too. And if I see a value with my own daughter, um, then I think other people will see values with their sons and daughters as well. And let's write it and throw it out there and just see what happens. But ultimately, I wrote it because it it was good for me. It was good for my family, and hopefully, it's good for others as well.
It's really, really good. And, I sound like a big fangirl because I am, because it's really that good.
Thank you so much.
You call them, call this group of kids the bell buckle gang, and
Yes.
define their characters to be funny and competitive and loyal in the book, The Legendary Adventures of Doc Copper and the Mad Dash of Fireface. And you know that the title is a little, like Mad Dash of Fireface, and you don't know until you read the book who Fireface is and why that's all about.
Right.
I'm not going to give it away,
Yeah.
so people have to read the book. But the legendary adventures of Doc Copper, and you mentioned that some of these were representative of childhood people that you knew. Were the
Yeah.
experiences the same? I mean, did you have a J dog in your life as you were growing up that you extracted some of the things that were happening with J dog and the Bellini Blondie and all these different things? I mean, the characters were just incredible to read about.
Well, yes and no. I mean, they're highly fictionalized, but
Okay.
these characters, for the most part, the boys in particular are based loosely on my buddies. And so so J Dog is based on a buddy of mine who I actually met on a dinosaur dig.
Oh,
We were digging up dinosaur fossils up in Montana. I met I met him there. His name's not J Dog. And but we end up, we're just dudes that connected, and he had a really unique personality. He does have a unique personality to him. He has a wit about him. He has a mannerism about him. And I was just like, this guy's a character. Everything about him is a character. And so yeah, so I met him when I mean, we were older at the time. So I kind of just distilled him down to a 13, 14-year-old version of what I thought he would be. Then I added a little bit of adrenaline to him and turned him up and, cut him loose. And that's kind of what I did with all the guys. Alfie is one of my favorite. I was a tennis player. And so I played tennis in college. And Alfie was a was a teammate of mine. The real Alfie was a teammate of mine from Malaysia,
oh wow.
and so he came over, and then during the summers, I think 2 summers, he came and lived in the barn with me. And so we actually practiced tennis while we lived in a barn. And so he's kind of integral into the whole thing as well. But again, the characters are fictionalized. But I was inspired by buddies, if you will. And so trust, they're getting a kick out of it. They're all getting a kick out of it right now.
Oh, that's just great. Really super. You have a background in Christian apologetics. And
Yes,
for
ma'am.
listeners who may not know what that is, Christian, because the word is always a little deceptive to me until you understand that Christian
Yeah.
apologetics is defending the Christian faith by providing a reasoned defense to its truths to those who disagree. How
Yes.
has your faith been influenced by this message within Doc Copper?
That's a great question. What you'll see in Doc Copper is a kids that operate with a biblical worldview. All right. So when they're faced with challenges, they're acting from a starting point of they have a faith in God, and then they react from that starting point. And so with some novels that would be considered Christian novels, they almost um, they almost try to preach their faith at certain sections in the book or in their story. And what I tried to do with Doc Copper is not preach the faith, but show the faith because he is operating with that foundation. You know, there is one scene where a tragedy happens and he questions why God is doing certain things to him. You know, he doesn't question if God exists. He doesn't question, you know, and there's no, he recognizes his faith. He recognizes God, but he's just like, why did he do this? You know, I don't see what's happening here. And then, you know, his mom then steps in like a mother and says, hey, listen, you know, this is why he may be doing this, and I see God's work in this. And so that their foundation is one of a godly foundation. And so all the kids are kind of in different spot, but I hope you see that throughout, is that they're operating with a biblical worldview. I don't necessarily build the worldview into it, and meaning from, you know, I don't preach it and teach it. They're just starting there, and then they're acting in that, you know. And there are times in the book where they run up against the secular world. They run up against competing ideas. And that's really where you see it come out, because all of us in our life, we're going to run up against something, and then the real person comes out of us. You know, whenever we are stopped, and whenever we are scratched, whenever we are pricked, then the real foundation and how we live our life comes out. You know, what decisions do we make when things are difficult? You know, and that's really when you know what faith you have, is what do you do when things are difficult? And so with Doc and the kids, they come up against something that is very, very difficult. Well, how do they respond? And that is where you see the biblical worldview happen. They're responding from a place of faith instead of a place of non-belief, if you will. You know, they're not responding like secular kids, you know, who like from the entertainment industry that would cuss and swear, and they would go crazy and things like that. They actually have this moral foundation. And then as kids, they're trying to navigate the world, and how do they then approach the world? Um, so that's kind of how, you know, I hope that the worldview comes out in this.
You know, just to tell the audience a little bit about the book, in that this is what do they call them? They're four wheelers, right?
Yeah, four wheeler and ATV. Yeah,
Racing and
yeah, it is.
competition, and you know, they've won an international status, and then all these different countries get together for this thousand
Yeah,
mile race up Cabo, and all the things that happened to them along the way. Just to give the listener to this a little bit of context about what the
yeah,
storyline is about, and about, you know, the challenges of, you know, from Doc Copper winning his first race, and then all the challenges that happened to the family and to his friends and all that stuff, and the travails of getting to the race, and then all the things that happened. But he was like truly the underdog, that everybody just like laughed at
yeah,
him, and because he had a lesser vehicle for him to
yeah,
use.
yeah,
And then this whole race, and then this horse that you know, Fireface is a horse. We'll tell people that much.
yeah,
Won't
yeah, yeah, yeah,
tell
yeah, yeah,
all
for
the
sure, for
kids
sure.
about that. And then what happens with Fireface at the beginning, middle, and end of the story. It just, you know, transitions. So I just wanted to give people a little bit of context of what we're talking about how this is
Yeah,
race is going. And Darek, your style of writing, you know, you're in the middle of these races, and you just, it's just a page turner, because you're just like reading it as though you were racing at 80 miles an hour, you know, as you're going down the race, so
good.
that, you know, people know what, you know, it's, you know, a bunch of boys, and there's two girls in the storyline, and Doc Copper's mom, who's a very
Yeah,
spiritual, like, you know, loving mother,
yes,
and some issues, some health issues that happened with his dad, and how that
yeah.
played into the role. So you brought in all the elements of just a really great story. How did you get to be such a good novel writer, since this is your first novel?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, for me, it's rewriting. You know, is not being afraid to, you know, I always believe that, you know, kind of the best idea is yet to be thought. So, you know, I redrafted The Legendary Adventures of Doc Copper a lot. And I would write it, and then I would write it again. And I would write fresh. I would not I wouldn't have the old one up, and I wouldn't like edit it. I would start over. I would just completely start over with a blank page. The story's in my head, and I'd go again. And then I would just, I don't know how many drafts I did, but
Wow.
I realized that every time I wrote it, it actually got better. And so that for other writers out there, or say you're an aspiring writer, don't be afraid to just crumple something up and then start over. And just because the more you do something, the better you get at it. And so I just kept on writing it and doing it over and over and over again. And that was my process with it. And that's what I do. That's what I do. I just rewrite. Great books are not written; they're rewritten. That was a phrase I heard by somebody. I liked it. I
That's
liked it.
good. That's really, really good. You've spent years writing, speaking, and doing filmmaking about faith and culture. How do you see
Hmm.
this book as fitting in to what is occurring in our culture today, especially among the Gen Zs, the 15 to 24-year-old age group, which is kind of a target for this book because these characters are
Yeah.
13 and 14 years old. So it's a little bit of a target for that. How do you feel like this is going to fit into what's going on in the world for them right now?
Well, I hope that there's a huge, I believe there's a huge population that wants a story like this, that they're hungry for a clean story. They're hungry for a story that has faith in it. They're hungry for a story that has courage and perseverance in it. And they're hungry to not just get inundated with secular ideas. And so I'm hoping that this affirms their faith. It affirms their worldview. It affirms their conservative outlook on life, and that they actually are encouraged that there is somebody else out there like them. They are not alone. And a story like this shows them they are not alone. And I'm writing things that I believe in, and I believe they believe in them too. And so they can see it, they can be encouraged by it, they can laugh out loud. Hopefully, there's an excellence to the writing to where it's a high level. We want to do all things. I want to be as good as I can be. Whatever gifts have been given to me, I want them. I want to master them as good as I can. And so I hope the writing is good. I hope the story is good, but I hope it affirms their own beliefs, that somebody else out there is like them, saying the things that they believe in their mind. Because in this world today, some when you have a contrarian point of view, you can get attacked. You can get attacked. And I know there are ideas in the legendary adventures of Doc Copper that will be attacked by a large or certain segments of our society, but that's okay. That's okay. Some things need to be written about. Some things need to be said, and it's for everybody out there that believes those things to affirm them and saying there's somebody out there that's also got your back. And I'll write stories that have your back. And so hopefully, those Gen Zers and the younger ones and those families that are raising families have something they can turn to that affirms what they're teaching at home, instead of what a lot of times comes from um, larger secular publishers and Hollywood and things of that nature.
It just occurred to me just hearing you talk about all this. I would almost suggest writing a companion guide, almost like what did you get out of this? And what did you get out of this situation with J Dog and what was going on? And what did you get out of this, when they were down and out for like the fourth time and everybody encouraged them to get up as more of a study guide, because I think if you just listening to you talk in this conversation, quite honestly, I was just reading the story and thought it was a really good story and didn't really think deeper into what the message of the story was. So maybe, like a companion guide to short, wouldn't have to be long. These are like a study questions, or you have your publisher put it at the end of the book or something like that, to really bring home your message because it's such a compelling, interesting, fun adventure story that I'm not sure that as you're reading it, that people are thinking of the deeper meaning of what's happening with these characters. So just a thought as our conversation is going along here, might be
That's
something
a great
to think
idea.
about that.
Yeah, it's a great idea. No,
Because
I like that a lot.
you don't want it's a it's a page turner, for the audience. It's like you just keep reading, on and on and on, because it's got so much adventure and good characters and good conversation in it, that I honestly, I don't think that I really thought through the moralistic stories of what was happening to these kids in the way that you're describing it here in our conversation. So just something to think about with that. And with that, I
I'll
think
do that. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. I think this is a good place for us to take a quick station break. So hold that thought, Darek. We're going to be right back after we hear from our sponsors for AmericaOutloud.news. America Out Loud Talk Radio plays the Tenpenny Files here on the iHeart Radio Network every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can also listen anywhere in the world by going to AmericaOutloud.news and logging in through their media player. If you've missed any of these great conversations about these fantastic books, boy, I feel like I'm the lucky person to have had the privilege of reading all these great books and talking to these great authors. If you've missed any of these, that you can listen to them or you can watch them as podcasts. You can listen on Spotify, Pandora, Apple, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeart Virtual Studio, and on my social media platforms on X, Instagram, Rumble, and YouTube. Or you can go to our Substack. You can listen on drtenpenny.substack.com, and you can listen to just going to our main website, drtenpenny.com, hovering over the podcast tab. There will be a window that drops down that says all podcasts, and you can watch them there or listen to them. So we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. If you enjoy these sponsors and it's something that you think would be good in your life, please support their sponsors, because our sponsors are the ones that support us. Sit tight. We'll be right back with more conversations with author, film producer, entrepreneur, and incredible debut novel written by Darek Isaacs, The Legendary Adventures of Doc Copper and the Mad Dash of Fireface. We will be right back. My supplement line is called the Opti line, and we've been working with these formulations for many years and have years and years of documented success. Our best sellers are OptiMune, OptiVital Cleanse, and we've got a whole line of supplements that you can look at, the ones that I've hand selected and have used personally with my patients at Tenpenny Integrated Medical Center for almost 30 years. You can find out more by going to supplements.drtenpenny.com, and you get 10% off by using our code DRT10 for every day. But if you sign up for the monthly auto ship, if you're going to be on these supplements for an extended period of time, sign up for that, because then you get 15% off. That's supplements.drtenpenny.com. My Chronic Silver is a product that everyone should have in their cabinet. It just helps everything. It helps every infection. It helps with your eyes, with your skin, with bladder infections. I even give it to my dog. He has dry eyes, and I put several drops of the Chronic Silver in his eyes every day. He blinks and seems to really like it. And there's a cream. It's a gel, actually. They call it a Liazone. That's good for any type of skin ailment. You will want to look at all of these products and gather them into your medicine cabinet. Go to mychronicsilver.com and use the affiliate code DRT to get 15% off on your first order. Well, welcome back, everybody. Today's conversation is with author, film producer, and entrepreneur Darek Isaacs about his debut novel, The Legendary Adventures of Doc Copper and the Mad Dash of Fireface, a story that combines action, humor, friendship, and perseverance in an unforgettable adventure read. Let me tell you just a little bit more about today's guest. Darek Isaacs is the author of several books and has produced documentary films exploring the intersection of science, archaeology, and scripture. His work combines thoughtful research with engaging storytelling, encouraging readers and audiences to think critically and pursue truth through biblical worldviews. He is the founder of Watchman Ministry USA, a Christian ministry dedicated to mentoring men, strengthening families, and equipping leaders through biblical discipleship. Darek, thank you so much for being here with us today. Welcome back to the Tenpenny Files.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
You know, your book emphasizes courage, perseverance, and writing for something great, something greater in all of that. I think you have expressed what message you want to get across to your readers. But what did this message mean to you personally?
That's a great question. me personally is just facing life and never giving up. We are, there's someone once told me that um, God gives us everything that we need to stand facing the wind. And I was going through a hard time when that was told to me. And it's interesting facing the wind, not being carried by the wind, not being just gently, this world doesn't necessarily just pick you up and easily breeze you forward. We have to stand against the wind. And sometimes you're basically feeling like you're not just facing the wind, you're in the middle of a storm. And how do you charge ahead in that? And so when we have to charge ahead into a storm, we have to face the wind, face the storm, face the hurricane. What is it that gives us the strength? Where does the steel in our spine come from to stand and to rush headlong into something like that? And that's really when you look at Doc Copper. My inspiration is I want to also, like Doc Copper, rush headlong into challenges to just push ahead in every situation and not give up. Yeah, we are going to be struck down, but we're not destroyed. We're going to be persecuted, but we are not crushed. And every time we get knocked down, we get right back up and keep going. And so, really, a lot of this book and a lot of this story is maybe preaching to myself
Hmm.
and to just keep going, keep pushing, keep fighting, have fun along the way, enjoy life, have a great time, laugh out loud, because the healing power of laughter, right? And so there's so much in this story. It's just, let's laugh, let's have fun, let's love our friends, let's love our family, let's love our faith, and we can do anything through Christ who strengthens us. Through our faith, we can just keep pushing forward. And so that's really what this story represents, and what represents to me, at least.
Well, I think that it really does. And, at the end of your book, Doc Copper said something, it's interesting. I had to keep reminding myself this was a 13-year-old character because a lot of the things that he said throughout the book demonstrated great wisdom for somebody that's that age. And he, through the trials and travails of what happened during this whole story, I think he really grew up fast. And I think that the other characters did too, but the emphasis was more on Doc Copper about how he was really growing in his in just into a young man, actually. And he
Yeah.
said at the end of the book, or Doc Copper said, we raced for something greater than ourselves. We raced for the love of one another, while many other teams raced for greed. How does that apply to life in general?
The when you look at greed, when you look at kind of that spectrum of emotions, greed and hunger and thirst, and when you want more and more and more, um, that runs out. Especially greed. It runs out. It doesn't give you the strength to keep going when everything is so hard. If you're running on hate, so much in this world runs on hate right now. And that stuff is going to, that emotion it runs hot at first, it burns very quick, but it's going to leave you empty. It's going to leave you basically flat down in the desert, like some of the other racers. They're just face down because they ran on hate, and hate gives it absolutely will spin you and spit you out. You have to have something that is worth fighting for, and hate's not it, greed's not it. And so when you find that other strength, that love for faith, family, and friends, that is when things get so hard, that pushes you forward. Where greed fails, love pushes on. Hate is absolutely going to just burn you out. Love is going to fill you up. And so that's that kind of yin and yang, if you will, those two. And hopefully people see that, with love, that is the better way to go, and it's going to push you forward than greed and hate and malice and all of that.
Yeah, you could see in the storyline and the development of these characters as time went on and things got tougher for them. And you could see that they were all binding together and that they were really, I mean, at the beginning of the story, there was a lot of antagonism and between some of the different
Yeah.
characters. But as the storyline went on, you could see the bond and the binding and the support of all these things that were happening. So you can see that all the characters sort of matured by their experiences, which is kind of life in general, I think.
Yeah, and that's a great point to kind of talk about, because the hardships is actually where I think you grow your character the most.
Exactly.
And your personal character is through hardships. When things are easy, you don't grow that much. You simply coast. And so the strongest people, the ones that grow up the fast, that develop that strength of character, are actually the ones that face the hardest times in life. It is when you see a beautiful person, that beauty didn't happen by accident, right? I mean, that beauty was forged through fire. When you see a strong person, it didn't happen by accident. It was forged through trials. And so when these kids face so much hardship, it made them grow. It made them mature, and the bonds of love had to be there, because if love didn't bind them together, they were going to break. And so a lot of times we don't like going through hardships. We don't like trials. We don't like tribulations, but what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, to use that old
Exactly.
cliche, right? I mean, those things are what make us who we are. And so the harder some of the things are that you have to go through, the stronger you're actually becoming as a person. And so I think that's what you see with the characters and how they're able to grow. They weren't at home just playing, video games. They weren't at home just, swinging on a swing set. They challenged themselves, and through those challenges, they had to grow. It was either grow or die. And so and they grew, and they pushed on. And so yes, there is that character development, that moral development, and that happens. And it was, it's fun to see, and it's fun to read through, and see how those kids all reach where they go.
Each, and you can see him like, and isn't the one girl's name Penelope? No.
Penelope Persephone, yes,
Yes.
yes.
And how she started out as this little foo-foo, you know, pink fingernails sort of girl, and
Right,
then
right.
started towards the end having these expositories that were like so brilliant and really like summed up what needed to be moved forward. So you saw
Yeah.
growth in there. And I mean, every single one of the characters, you could see the development as they grew along the way. You've written extensively about faith and worldviews in the past. In which
Mhm.
avenue is more enjoyable to you, for you to write in, fiction or nonfiction?
It is 100% fiction.
Wow.
I love 100% the very real reason why. Okay, very very my previous books in biblical apologetics and worldview, because they're nonfiction and because of the topics that I was engaging in, there is a absolute need for precision and perfection. I had to get every little detail right. The stakes were just simply too high. With fiction, I can throw this worldview in there and just write with fun, and not have to have that walk that tight rope of perfection, because it's fiction and we're just rolling with it. And I laughed so much writing Doc Copper, and in my previous books, I like them and I'm fulfilled by them, but I wasn't laughing out loud. So this is a lot of fun in this. And I think, in some ways, I'm able to send the same message, but in a totally different way. I package it differently. And so the fiction's a lot of fun, and going forward, you're going to see a lot of fiction out of me, just because of the enjoyment I have writing it. It's just a good time. It's a good time.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that because, like I said to you before, I got down to the end of this book and I was like, that can't be the end. I mean, that can't be the end. There's got to be more to this story. It's, like, where's the next volume? Where's the next part
Right.
to read about? Because there's a lot of storylines in there that need
Yes,
completion or need to be further developed or
that's
something.
right. That is right.
Are you planning to do that?
Oh yeah, Doc Copper, J Dog, Mac, they're all coming back. They're all coming back. Absolutely.
That's
You haven't
really
heard you have not heard the last of them.
Yeah, because there's a lot of storyline development to go on in there about, their travels and what happens with Fireface and, his dad that had the health issues and
That's right.
the development of this racing career. And it lends you leave it with a really good cliffhanger that people want more, that they can go really look forward to your next book. What was your
Thank you.
personal biggest takeaway from writing this book? I mean, we talked a little bit about your enjoyment of writing fiction and, being able to talk about biblical worldviews. But when you got down to the end, to where it was like, the last thing that Doc Copper said is like, period, the end. How did you feel about the whole process and the book as a whole?
Uh, there are so many emotions that went into it. I loved it. I was so thankful that when finished those last few words of the book, I was just so grateful. I was so thankful that it came out the way it did. There is sometimes people ask me, hey, how do you write what you write? And the answer is I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly where everything comes from. I do most of my creative writing in the middle of the night. It's like I get 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning is when I do that. When I'm staring at a blank page, that's when I'm doing that. And then I just write and it flows out of me, and you never really know what's going to come or how it's going to end. And so when Doc Copper ended this first volume, when it ended, I was just so grateful. And it's just, I sat back and it was like, it's finished. It's finished. No more rewrites. This is it. And that's another thing. The earlier drafts is like, okay, I want to rewrite this now. But when this one got done, it was done. And so it's just, I felt completion with this story and go, that's it. And so that feels so good. So that's really what I felt at that point. It's like, yes, I got it. This is it. It's done. All right. That's novel one.
Have you already started the second one?
Yes.
Good. I'm
Yes.
so glad to hear that because
Yeah,
definitely
they're coming
get
back.
it done. I want to be one of your first people to get the hot off the presses so that I can read that book.
Thank you.
Have you back to do part two.
Thank you.
This book, The Legendary Adventures of Doc Copper and the Mad Dash of Fireface. Um, well, I think we gave it a pretty good overview here about what your principles are and what you want people to take away from. But why should people buy this book for their kids and why should they read it for themselves? I mean, I see this as a great stocking stuffer book, a graduation present, a great summer read here. Now we're in the summer for kids in between times. But why would you say to sell this book and why should somebody get it for their kids and for their own personal library?
They're going to have so much fun reading this book. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to laugh out loud. They're going to feel good about it. And it's going to affirm so many of the things that they personally believe. It's going to affirm their faith while they're laughing out loud. And I think it's going to be nostalgic for a lot, like some older people. I think we're going to look back and they'll be nostalgic. We'll remember what it was like when we grew up. And it's just going to feel good for them to read this. And really that's what storytelling is that we want you to feel good. We want to affirm the values that you have, these good morals, these biblical principles, the faith affirming values, and you're going to have just a blast doing it. It's a good time. They're not going to regret reading it. It'll be a good time.
And it's a memorable story. It's something that will stick with you too. And you want it to stick with you. Sometimes you read things that you wish you could unread. The stuff went into your head and you
Right.
wish you could unread that. Well, tell us a little bit about some of your other books that are available, Darek.
Well, the first one's called The Extinction of Evolution, and I get into really this one's totally it's more of a dark read. It is the evils of Darwinism, and if you believe in that evolution, that our origins are evolutionary based, if you believe our origins are survival of the fittest, if you believe our origins are really red and tooth and claw, what does that play out for society? And it's a very dangerous society, and it really pales in comparison to the biblical worldview. The second one is dragons or dinosaurs, and I just give a historical scholastic approach to where the legends of dragons came from, and I compare them to dinosaurs, and I give a young earth creation view of dinosaurs in that. And that's actually where I met the character of J-Dog. We were on a dinosaur dig, and so we were digging up dinosaurs together. And then my third book is Can God Create a Rock So Big He Can't Move It? And it is an exploration of really the philosophy of the Bible, and then showing that the Bible is the only worldview that stands really the test of critique. If you look at materialism and all these other belief systems, once you critique them, they actually fail. And where the Bible actually stands, it is the anvil that has worn out every hammer. It's been, everyone has tried to destroy it, everyone has tried to burn it, they've tried to discredit it, and yet still it stands. And so that's really what that third book is. And so those three together are the biblical apologetics. And then Doc Copper is really the new season, the new season of my writing, and it's launching, what comes next.
And what about the films that you've made?
Yeah, that's the film is Dragons or Dinosaurs. It was available on Netflix for a while, and it is a companion film for Dragons or Dinosaurs, the book. And then we are hopeful that Doc Copper can also make its cinematic release
Oh,
here at
I
some
think it would
point.
be a great movie. It would be a
Well,
really, really
thank you.
good movie.
I do too. So we're working on that now.
That's very, very good. Do you have a website or social media of someplace where people can follow you?
Absolutely. DarekIsaacs.com. And then everything can be found there for
Okay.
sure. DarekIsaacs.com.
Including your social media links and everything are there too?
I think they are, yes.
That's really pretty good. Well, Darek,
Yeah.
we've got a few minutes left here towards the end of the show. What sorts of things would you like to talk to our audience about today and to leave them with today?
Oh, boy, that is an open-ended question right there.
It is on
The
purpose.
something to keep pushing on, to keep have faith, to hold on to those old school values, if you will. That I think there's a lot more people like us out there than maybe the left stream media would want us to believe. I think that our numbers are a lot stronger than what they want us to believe. I actually think we're the majority, and I think we should live our faith out loud, if you will. I think we should live our values out loud. I want to encourage them to do that, and also you know, um, when they're choosing entertainment, go the conservative route. When they're, vote with their pocketbooks a little bit on what they're choosing to buy and to let their families read and watch and things that of that nature. I want to show. I'm very thankful for Skyhorse. Skyhorse is our publisher. I would love to show Skyhorse that they did the absolute greatest thing ever by publishing Doc Copper. I would like other publishers to look at that and go, this vein that they tapped into is really what people want to read. So, but it's on the people, it's on the public. You have to vote with what you purchase and what you choose to watch. And so I encourage everyone to kind of take a stand there and go, I'm going to support the people doing the good stories, the ones that affirm our faith, our values, and our way of life. And I'm going to stay away from the ones that don't, and so that's what I encourage people to do.
Well, I would love to have you back on to talk about the dinosaur one. I really would.
Okay.
Do you happen to know Russ Miller? He writes about apologetics and particularly focuses on the dismantling and destroying the theory of evolution. And
What?
one of the chapters in his book was about the dinosaurs, and it was only just a chapter. So I'd love to read a whole book about that. So I think that would be
Okay.
great.
We can make that happen. I don't know Russ Miller, but it sounds like he and I would get along. So
I really think you would. He's written incredible stuff. He says in his book that he can dismantle the theory of evolution in 4 minutes. And
good
so
for him. I love
when
it.
when I had him on the show, I said, "Oh, 4 minutes." I said, "Go."
Go.
So it was the his book is that particular book that we reviewed is called Consider the Cost, and it's really
Interesting.
good in a lot of testimonials. He speaks at a lot of college campuses and
Good. That's
dismantle
important.
the whole theory of evolution right there in front of everybody's eyes. So I
Good
think
for him.
you would enjoy that. But I'd really like to. I'll talk to Diane and have you to come back on and talk about your dinosaur one and your film.
That's wonderful. That's great.
Well, I really appreciate having you on the show today, Darek, and really, I for the audience, he was on my schedule a couple of weeks ago, and I pushed him out so that I could complete reading the whole book because it's kind of long. It's like 500 pages, but I wanted it's not something you can skim. You have to read the whole book because if you turn like a page or two, you missed a bunch. So you want to read the whole book. And so I'm so glad that I delayed so that I could read the whole book so we'd have a great conversation today. So Darek, thank you so much. Thank you for your travels. Thank you for your wisdom, and thank you for writing this book. Really inspirational to young people. And so I would really encourage everyone to get this book. And adults could read this too. If you just like adventure
Yes.
novels, it's not just written for kids. It's written for all ages. And so it's really, really good. So with that, I want to close out with one of my favorite verses from the Bible. I close all my podcasts with which is Romans 12:12. Rejoice in hope, be patient in trouble, and be persistent in prayer, for which I have written a three-part devotional series. Rejoice in Hope is book one. Be Patient in Trouble is book two. Be Persistent in Prayer is coming out in January after the first of the year. So I want to thank everybody for being here today and listening to us. You can find all of the books from all of our guests at bookstore.drtenpenny.com. You can also find my book there, Zero Accountability in a Failed System, and also the devotional books. Please follow us on X and Instagram at Busy Dr. T, because that really helps to get us to get the word out. So with that, remember to lean into God, trust him for everything. He will never let you down. We will see you here tomorrow or the next time on the Tenpenny Files. Have a good rest of your day, everybody. Goodbye and God bless.